There have been moments in the middle of all of this crisis where I've had great joy. Moments where I've kind of been taken beyond myself. Maybe I was watching something or reading something or a good conversation, and I've thought, oh, that was really good. And actually, in those moments, I've forgotten that I was in the middle of a global pandemic. And you get to the end of those moments, you go, oh, it's still there. This crisis has still gone on. And I hope you have had those moments, and that lovely fleeting taste or the forgetting of all that's going on around ourselves. But maybe it's caused you to say to yourself, can we have lasting joy? Is there deep satisfaction still available during all of this and beyond it? Christians want to say yes. And on Sunday, Christians were celebrating what the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. And that's a key part of what it is to be a Christian. And Christians believe that it has incredible meaning and says something extraordinary about the possibility of satisfaction and joy, no matter what our circumstances. And I want to think about three things, and I'd love you to consider three things that the resurrection means or says to us, even in these circumstances, about joy. And it's extraordinary news. The first is this. Matthew, who wrote one of the accounts of Jesus' life and ministry in chapter 28 in the Bible, he records that Jesus has been dead, completely dead. But then when his friends, somebody called Mary and some other women, go to the tomb, they find that Jesus isn't dead. He's risen from the dead miraculously. And the first thing this tells us, and there's this little word in there, and it's idu. It's a Greek word, and it's used 4 times from verses 2 to 9. And it's a word that translates badly into English as behold, but it's a word that means, look at this, you'll never believe. Guess what? And it just conveys this sense of surprise at what's happening. They weren't expecting a supernatural resurrection from the dead either. It's extraordinary. It's a miracle. But what it tells us, and the meaning behind it is that it tells us that we're more than flesh and blood. We're more than the physical. We can have hope beyond this. It answers the questions about our existence. There is somebody who's in control, who has dominion, who has power, even over life and death. That's the first thing. The second thing is this. We read that Jesus then meets Mary, and Mary is delighted. She's fearful, but she's delighted that she's met with Jesus. And what it tells us, because Jesus says that although he doesn't meet us physically now, he's left his Holy Spirit and we can still meet him. And people all over the place are having the experience, even in isolation, and they're being alone, the experience of meeting Jesus. I've had the privilege this past couple of weeks to talk to 2 people who have a particular reason to feel alone and isolated and in despair at the moment. And in hearing them, they've said to me, yes, I am those things. This is terribly hard, terribly painful. But I don't know where I'd be without Jesus. Every day I can speak to him even though I'm on my own, even though I'm in this pain. They said, I don't know what it would be like if you were somebody who didn't have God, who didn't have Jesus to speak to. So even in the midst of this, we can be confident and we be sure that God listens to us and we're not alone. And then thirdly, we can have joy because Jesus is alive in worship. Something very strange happens when Jesus comes back to life. He goes and he meets his friends, and we read twice in Matthew. Once that Mary bows down and worships him, and then he meets his other friends, the disciples, the apostles, and they also worship him. Now, they were so happy to see Jesus back, resurrected from the dead. It was amazing. It was a miracle. But for them to worship is a completely weird thing to do. But actually what happens is the resurrection confirms to them that this friend of theirs, Jesus, who they have come to really suspect and be convinced isn't any normal man, is in fact God himself. He's God raised from the dead. He has power over life and death, and they worship. And the thing about worship is it's the most satisfying activity there is. It's better than anything. It's better than Liverpool winning matches. It's better than the best meal. It's better than the best conversation. It's the most incredible, fulfilling experience imaginable. It's what we were made for. And because Jesus is alive, we can worship now. You can worship in your bedroom, on your own in a house, with other people in a house. You can worship from the garden. But you can have true joy. You can experience God himself because Jesus has risen from the dead.